Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
We're living in strange times, man. We are so living in strange times.
Yeah.
How's the COVID? So we're a year in the COVID.
Yeah.
How's that working for you?
So we opened up our gym, Sweatbar Fitness, in January of last year.
Right.
So 2020, January 1.
Timing.
We launched, yeah. Well, we did 2 weeks before that, but that was kind of promo, let people come in for free. So we launched in January 1st. Start getting some traction. Things are going well. We hit March, mid-March. And I remember sitting in a restaurant with my sister and her husband, and they're all talking, and I'm completely out of the conversation. Like, I'm just staring into space, right? Because I'm thinking, like, we're gonna have to shut down in a week. Like, I just kind of felt like it was coming. And you know, sure enough, we had to shut down, and it was tough mentally. Like, I saw it everywhere, right? My friends, you know, small business owners everywhere. It was a really, really tough time, and I'm thinking, like, how there's, for me personally, like, we were just talking about Robbins, but you know, he has that quote that turn your expectations into appreciation, and your whole world changes in an instant. So for me, I knew there was silver lining somewhere, and then we had to find them fast. So we pivoted and did an online thing, and then started doing online videos. Yep. And it's funny, I started doing this thing called Cardio Fire online, right? It was just an online cardio workout. And now a year later, we just had this company reach out to us because they saw one of those, and they said, hey, look, we got people all over the world that we do exercises for once a month. Would you do one for them? And I said, yeah, absolutely. You know, so they had all these people join in on this video that I did for them. And so I thought, you know, strategically, I need to put another video out there and invite them all to the next one.
Of course.
Right? You know?
Of course.
And so I have that next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. I think, and I looked at the event today.
Is this live? I mean,
it's a live. It's a Facebook Live, so I can't see them, but they can see me, right? So I'm just putting on like an exercise workout. They're all at home and they're just doing it. But people kind of like that actually because they don't want people watching them, right?
Got it.
So I went to the event yesterday, and there's 2,000 people like signed up for this event, right? And I'm thinking, wow, like, you know, that's
big audience.
That's cool, right? Yeah. So what can come out of that, right? And then we did this thing called Superheroes for Kids, where because the kids weren't in school, right? And summertime was coming, and the parents were stressed out. So we started doing this online. My daughter and I, we just did this like workout online, you know, Facebook Live, and we had all these kids start tuning in. So then I got elementary schools reaching out to me now saying, hey, you know, on the next holiday, will you put on a fitness event? And fairs are coming to us saying like, hey, will you come and do this with the kids? And so I guess my point is that, you know, things were really bad, and it was a struggle from a business perspective for sure. But I think I look for silver linings everywhere.
Yeah.
You
How
know?
long were you shut down?
So
officially?
We opened back up in June. So like half of March, April, May, June. I think it was a little bit into June there. So like 3 months, and then we shut down again in December. A lot of gyms didn't shut down the second time.
What was the official law? Were you required to by the state?
I felt very yes, we were, but I felt very comfortable that we would not be, nothing would happen. But for me, I wanted to make sure our members were safe. Yeah. I wanted to make sure our trainers were safe, and I wanted to be playing ball and being a part of solving the problem.
I get it.
Right? You know, so
I get it.
A lot of people came at me. That's the one thing about being a business owner is you get every perspective in the world. And so
of course.
So for me, I'm thinking like, I just need to take it all in and make the most informed decision I can, right? So I said, let's, it's 3 weeks, let's shut it down. And we did an outdoor workout in the snow, and we had that guy come and film it.
Right.
And you got to see that video.
That was a silver lining. Seen that.
Like people saw that video and it pumped them up so much. Like, when you open back up, I'm coming to your gym.
Yeah, it's insane.
So there's always silver linings, right? But for me, I just said, let's play ball. We'll shut down. We want to be a part of the solution. But then, I go Christmas shopping and there's 3,000 people in the mall, right? And I'm thinking, like, this is just insanity, So that's when it became a little bit frustrating. And then the relief, that's out there, it was impossible for us to get the second time around because they have requirements around, being a business for so long and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it was tough, but I know a lot of people out there struggled, but, the reality is that I don't want to say it was a good thing. I know there's a lot of people that got really sick. People lost loved ones, the whole COVID thing. But the reality is that until you have something like that shakes up your world, you take everything for granted,
No
So
question.
for me personally, I'm looking at everything different. I get to go see my friend play guitar this weekend, on a deck, and it's like the greatest thing in the world. I'm so excited for it, And because, we just took so much of that for granted, just being out with friends, being in a bar and being able to have a couple of drinks, we're not able to do that right now, So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I heard Dakota Meyer, he was, he just won the Medal of Honor. I heard him say something I thought was super insightful. He said, I will never want another 9/11 to ever happen again, but I want the day after 9/11 to happen all the time.
Every day.
Where the whole world came together, the whole
we need to
U.S.
find
came
more,
together.
We need to find more days like that.
Right, yeah. So I kind of look at COVID like that. Like, I never want a global pandemic to happen again, but the appreciation of things, like the appreciation for teachers. I mean, how many parents are now saying, like, oh my gosh, you teachers are amazing.
If they're not saying that, they should be.
They should be saying it.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Everything. Nurses. I mean, look how they stepped up and
well, no doubt.
like the work that they did, and just I think people prove things to themselves that they might have never proven. You don't really know who you are until you put yourself in the fire. And that's why I started my business, actually. I just thought, like, Rocky round 14, everyone's saying stay down, until you get knocked down, you don't really know who you are.
I think so. I think what this pandemic did was it exposed how soft a lot of America is.
Yeah. Oh.
And I don't mean in the belly or in the butt. I'm just talking about how soft emotionally.
Yeah.
How soft mentally, and I'm definitely a person that would like to lean on the positive side of life, of course, and if there's plenty of negative, we could sit here and talk for hours about the negativity of life, but don't want to do that. But it's pretty obvious that we are not opposed to being led in any direction by any television show or anything we see on social media or anything our neighbors might say. We're just not really willing to think for ourselves much, and we're taking the easy route. And intellectually, it's lazy, and that's not serving us well right now. Yeah,
not at all. And you're right. I mean, there's huge vulnerabilities everywhere. And honestly, I mean, like, that was me in life 4 years ago. I started seeing soft spots, right?
But you could see them. Did you recognize them or not?
I think some things, like, just magically were brought to my attention, but I've always been sort of I'm always trying to, like, look at myself, and figure out how to become better. I don't know if everyone does that. I'm very, like, introspective, like.
Not everybody.
Yeah.
I would say probably a lot of people. I would guess that's probably the minority, only because it's such an uncomfortable exercise.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I don't. It's maybe it's just the way that I'm wired, but I'm always trying to figure out, like, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing better? How do I get better? And I saw so much of that, and not to just jump topics, but
that's what we do here.
Yeah, all over the place.
That's what we do.
But yeah, I mean, like 4 years ago, everything was great on the career side, but I wasn't doing work that really thrilled me, and I was coming home every day, and I loved playing with my daughter, but I was too tired to play with my daughter. I didn't have energy.
This is the years in corporate, right?
Yeah, like 2016, 17, and I was just looking for something. I was sick of mainstream music, like listening to on the radio. So I actually just started seeking podcasts, like, what can I be listening to that's going to, like, just give me a different perspective or a different mindset. Like, let me take in, it's kind of crazy. I always talk about taking in the inputs, like your inputs that you bring in are going to control your life. If you're listening to big thinking, positive, very effective, performance-oriented people, you're just going to start to become that way, And luckily, I'm kind of wired to like those kind of people. If you're constantly being fueled with negativity and,
the news services.
Yeah. People ask me all the time why I don't listen to the news. I'm like, there's nothing going on that's going to that I need to be a part of.
There's nothing
on the minute.
There's nothing there good for anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah. I mean, there's, local news is fine to know what's going on, but mainstream media is very polarized in both directions, and they push their agendas, and it's all segmented. Like technology has segmented the agendas, So if you're on one side, that's all you're going to see, right? So to me, it was just all crazy. I wanted to turn off all the noise.
Well, hold on a second. That's a great point.
Yeah.
See, I think we do that willingly. I think we decide to live in an echo chamber. We go back where it's comfortable.
Yeah.
If you're right wing, you're going to go to these outlets because they're telling you things to make you feel good, and those are my people.
Right. 100%.
That is not helping the national narrative. I don't believe it's not helping critical thinking, and it's not helping us get along better with people.
Not at all. Yeah. We were talking about Tribe Mentors, the book. Tim Ferriss has a question in that book saying, what would you tell someone coming out of college? What advice would you give? Like a very, motivated college student, right? And I've thought about that question a lot because I have nephews that are younger than me, nieces, and like, how do I help them? My own daughter, what advice would I give someone? And it was always really long-winded, and I've now broken it down to two things. One, read, just read books, because you're going to find your niche, and you're going to find your people, and they're going to speak to you, and it's going to open up your world. So I think of this as like proximity limitations. Like if you grew up 50 years ago and your dad was like a farmer and there was no one around you, that's kind of all you knew. You knew your world and all you had access to. Today, everything's different. Our proximity limitations have been drastically expanded. We have the whole world at our fingertips. We can learn so much about everything, cultures, perspectives, opinions. And for me, that's where I get excited about life. Like, I think that's amazing. To meet different people, to understand different, cultures and traditions. And so reading does that. It opens up your entire world. And when I started reading, 4 years ago, it's embarrassing to say I never read before that, but I just started reading all these books and they opened up my mind. And so the other thing I would tell them is to be open-minded. I think the smartest people in the world are the people that ask questions, the right questions, and that are constantly curious and just open-minded to other people's perspectives. I watch both news media, I don't watch the news, but I will purposely sometimes go and watch both just to see how they're taking a situation and spinning the narrative to their side. And it's the exact same thing that happened, and there's two completely different perspectives on it, which is fine if you're getting both perspectives and you're actually making informed, opinionated decision, whatever. But to just say like, I'm going to go always with this route,
which is what most people do.
I know. That's what everyone does.
90+% of the population, I'd throw a number at it, 90% of the population.
It's crazy. And honestly, like if I took my 10 closest friends and we sat down and we had to answer 10 really important questions about this world, this life, the way we think of things, I can guarantee we would have drastically different answers, right? They say birds of a feather flock together. I actually think I have a very diverse set of friends, which is good.
It's the best way to live.
I love that.
Of course.
And when they tell me things that I fundamentally disagree with, we have educated conversations about it. And it just makes them more unique.
That shouldn't be the except for you to say I have a diverse group of friends from all different kinds of backgrounds and thoughts.
Yeah.
That's just how life
that shouldn't be
was when I was younger, pre-internet days. That's how life generally, I think, kind of was. At least most sophisticated people that can think for themselves, that's how they live. But that whole rush to join a team or find my tribe. See, all these catchphrases, not all of them. Some of them, Chad, I think, do us more disservice than not. I mean, finding my tribe. Yeah, it's nice to be around people who have similar interests, but when that's the only people you see,
right?
It's, I don't know. I mean, the whole case in point, you mentioned that you go to both news services. So do I, because if something happens in the world, let me see what Fox is saying. Okay, let me see what CNN's saying. Those are the two biggies. There's others, but those are the two biggies. it's okay for me if both are covering the story and it's different because I can parse through that. What's happening now, though, I think, is that they're so polarized that some things aren't even being covered.
Right.
That's mind-numbing to me. So
Yeah.
what do you do with that? You know, that's when I realized that landscape. It really, I realized this about a week or two ago that it really isn't even worth even the 3 or 4 minutes to try to seek out what's going on.
Yeah.
Not that I want to be oblivious, but sometimes indifference is beautiful.
Yeah.
You know?
100%. Yeah. And honestly, like the people that are really holding the power and, you know, like, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's hard for me to get fired up about like watching. So,
but is it real? Like, how do you get fired up about something that, you know, I don't take anybody as gospel.
Right.
So, you know, there probably are people, orators that I can listen to that I like better than others naturally, but I wouldn't take this talking head as gospel and this one's a liar. I think the truth is somewhere in between the nonsense, right?
Right.
It takes effort, though.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the thing is that, you know, they're using a lot of fear to drive, you know, engagement, right? They want people to start paying attention, so they scare everyone.
Well, sure. Sure.
But for me, like, I guess books kind of replace that for
Absolutely.
me, right? Like you read The Rise of Superman, and they give so many stories in that book that I just became a part of, you know, like that became my world. You read just a book that everyone knows, Tuesdays with Maury, right? Maury Schwartz, the professor. That brings you back to an element of life and empathy, and you can relate with
Very
things.
special book.
Yeah, you can relate with relationships with people, right? Yeah. So you can relate with being so self-driven. So Mitch, the guy that wrote the book, he talks about in that book that he became so self-absorbed in his career and that he was making all this money, and then he learns that his old college professor that he loved and adored is dying, you know, and so he goes back and he's pulling up, and literally, you know, Maury's sitting on the porch waiting for him, and he like purposely drops his phone because he doesn't want to have to get off the call. And then he's just like, what am I doing? You know, and then he goes, sees his old professor, and they have these conversations. And it brings you back to an element of life that, like, I think we miss that in the, you know, when you're listening to news all day and it's like, oh, look what this person's doing now. Like, I don't know. I just like to take it back to spending all of my time consuming inputs that are just making me feel gratitude or, you know, some emotional feeling that makes me feel good.
Absolutely.
Versus anger and frustration, you know, and that's what news outlets are using as their hook.
They thrive on it.
Right?
Thrive on it.
So all we really have is a very mad population. They're just mad about stuff all the time. I see it constantly. Like, we have people that are coming into the gym talking about this. Did you hear about this? And I'm just thinking, like, I got to sleep in with my daughter this morning. You know, that's all I'm worried about.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I don't mean to knock the people that are, you know.
Well, it's crazy. Like, I have real moments that I get really overwhelmed. I haven't figured it out personally, and I'll share it. I don't know if I figured it out personally that maybe I'm just getting a little bit older, or it could be I've taken on a lot. You know, my schedule is so full by choice.
Right.
I don't know if it's all that, but there are times I get a little overwhelmed, and I say, wow, I don't ingest the news of the day and the media and the main topics that most people are bouncing around out there, the volatility of the conversations. I don't ingest any of that. I wonder if I had taken that on top of what I'm doing, I would lose my mind.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
I literally could not create. I couldn't help my clients. I could do nothing if I took all of that nonsense on top of my schedule. I don't know how people are doing it. I just don't get it.
It becomes all consuming.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Well,
not healthy.
Like, here's the, you know, and again, I don't say any of this to criticize anyone that's really into watching the news. Or my dad, you know, he watches the news all day long, and he's the greatest guy in the world to me, you know. So it's just for me, it fundamentally changed my life when I turned off the wrong inputs, and I think that's just one of the wrong inputs.
It's a choice.
And so, you know, I would challenge anyone that is feeling frustrated or angry or looking for a way to, you know, start to figure out if they're capable of more or if they have potential to fulfill, go spend a day in the woods and don't take a phone.
Yeah, I don't think most people can do it. I think they would get 10, 20 minutes in and they would get anxious and edgy and keep reaching for their phone. And And I think anyone under the age of 20 that would try that would absolutely just quit and run to their phone.
But if you can, I think you start to find an element. Wim Hof did this, right? Like when his wife committed suicide, he just started jumping in freezing cold water, and now he's known as the Iceman. He's climbing mountains, and his underwear and no socks. And I think he climbed Mount Everest like a couple times in just underwear, right?
Crazy.
And that was his way out of the chaos.
Right.
For a lot of people, for me, like it's physical feats. I'm doing 100-mile, the Allegheny 100 here soon, through the Allegheny Mountains with my buddy Jason, and we signed up lottery, and then we got picked to do it, which is awesome. They give you 50 hours. You start on a Friday at 6 o'clock, and they give you 50 hours to get out. So you're going into the Allegheny Mountains in pitch black, and you have a 100-mile trek ahead of you, right? So you got to be very careful what you take. But for me, when people were like, "You're crazy," like I couldn't even think of doing that. All I'm thinking about is how much I'm looking forward to an escape. Yeah. No one cares who you are in the woods.
Right.
No one cares like if you got enough likes on Facebook. It's all about the elements of let's dig deep and figure out who you are. Right.
Yeah, and that whole let's not go down that path. 'Cause I don't want to waste your time. We could bounce this back around forth all day. The world's screwed up, and most people are playing the game, and we're choosing our best, trying not to play.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about your book moment. For me, I had a book moment with Jim Rohn. We talked a little bit about that. What was your book moment where you realized? You said it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not reading enough. I need to dive into reading.
Yes.
What did that for you?
Well, so just to kind of backpedal just a little bit. I've struggled with alcohol for a long time.
Okay.
Not in the sense of I'm just a highly like if I do something I just go all in, I'm just kind of wired that way. So I wouldn't say that I just got in trouble with alcohol a few times in my younger days, and I could go months, years without drinking. But if I had a Friday night and nothing to do on Saturday, it'd be pretty hard to stop after 2, right? And anyone that drinks, way more than 2 puts himself at risk of getting into trouble and doing stupid things. So, I kind of had that going on in my life, but I just had a new daughter, and I didn't want that to be my life anymore. I still say that to I said, "Do you want to be an Ironman or do you want to be a drunk? Go figure it out." So, I just said, look, I need to figure out how to make myself better outside of my career. Career was great. I was doing great. I just felt like there was something more. So I picked up racquetball. Me and my buddies started playing racquetball every morning, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. And then I had people that wanted to start playing. So then I'd meet one person at 5, and then I'd meet someone else at 6, and then I'd go to work or work out and then go to work. And then I did that every morning. I had this one guy, Jason Blezer, I played with every morning, 6 a.m. And, we were kind of going separate ways in life because family and all that happened. But we lived together for a while. And, so long story short, that was our way of, like, getting to hang out, getting some fitness, and then having an outlet. And when I started doing that, the alcohol started, like, going away. And I was just like, okay, like, I'm starting to feel good, a little bit of exercise, a little bit of fitness. So let me figure out, like, let's just start searching for some mentors, right?
Okay.
And I started trying to change the inputs, found podcasts, Tim Ferriss, podcast for me was a big one. Started listening to a lot of people who came on that show, and it was so meaningful. Like, the conversations they were having were very meaningful conversations. Right. Insights were just coming out of everywhere.
And his guest list is incredible.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah. I actually started going back to some of the old ones that I listened to because, I listened to Robert Rodriguez, who's like a film director, and he just talked about his path into that, but he's such a great family guy too. So the things that he did with his daughters and the journaling, like just taking all of these things away from these people. And he always asked the question, like, what book do you gift the most or recommend or whatever? And people would start throwing out these books, and a lot of them became common books, right? They all said, The Magic of Thinking Big. Lots of people recommended that book. The Alchemist. Lots of people recommend that book. So I would go and start picking up these books. And the first one I picked up was Awaken the Giant with Tony Robbins. And I just started reading that, and I started hearing Tony talk about how his life was a shitbag disaster.
Right.
And then he figured out how to start putting the pieces together. And he has all these great, like, insights on life. And I'm just like, man, this guy's, like, really speaking to me, So that was long story short, that was my first breakthrough into reading, and then I got onto the other books. The Magic of Thinking Big completely changed my life. I was reading that book when I left corporate America and decided to do my own thing. The Alchemist was a huge book for me. I still remember the day I finished that last chapter, like just sitting in the sun, just got off the bus, from work, and I was late. I was supposed to be somewhere, but I didn't care because I'm like, I got to finish this book right now, So how about you?
The reading thing was very similar for me, but go back 20 years due to age. I lost my brother in 96, and the story was I was searching, The rest of my life was wonderful. Things were really, I just was married and had a good job. It was a good time. The mid-90s were a great time to be alive in America. It was. We didn't have any major wars. We were at that time, we're knocking out big diseases. Things were generally good. So all that was good, but I still was searching. I was doing the Robbins thing, and then he somehow led me to Jim Rohn, and that changed everything. Rohn was like that grandfather having that conversation, and Rohn had this book recommendations. He gave you 15 books.
Yeah.
Now, Rohn was 20 years my senior, so some of the books were like, There was The Wealthy Barber, there was The Alchemist, The Richest Man in Babylon, and one of them was not part of that list, but once I dove into Rohn was Tuesdays with Morrie.
Oh yeah.
Later, that was a big one for me too. That was late 90s, 99 maybe. But prior to that, Jim Rohn's one book that he wrote, The Art of Exceptional Living, I thought was the most amazing thing I ever read in my life, in that it was so logical and full of common sense and just life lessons told in a very, told in a very pleasing way. It wasn't contentious. It wasn't over the top. You weren't going to be walking on fire, But that concise book, The Art of Exceptional Living, and the audio component, that spurred me to just want to change my life. I can't tell you. We didn't have the caustic media then, and things were different, but I just didn't want the same old that everyone else was doing, that I realized I was capable of doing something really cool. I didn't know what that was, but I just didn't want what everybody else was doing.
Right.
And then I just started reading everything. Yeah. And the reading part, I think the only reason I'm doing this crazy show and I have the life that I have is because I started to read. Yeah. I think that is the number one difference that made the change. Selfishly for me, that was it. Everything came from that moment. 100%. The Alchemist was one of the first books. The Richest Man in Babylon, George Clayson, The Wealthy Barber. Those, and I just went and bought them on paperback. Yeah. Because Rohn said, but get these, and there's some I've never gotten through. Oh my God, there's a book about history, Lessons of History by Durant. Yeah. It's a short book, and I got one book that was like massive. I'm like, I'm never going to get through that. Right. So it is, everybody's recommendation is not for everybody, sure. But I learned early to take bits and pieces of what people recommended and find what resonated with me. Yeah. But it goes back to the reading. The reading was everything.
To that point, just for anyone that might be thinking about getting into reading or might struggle with this, if you are not captivated by a book, just put it down. I think the people that try to read,
good advice.
Yeah, everyone, when you try to read the book that someone else told you was awesome, and you're 2 chapters in and you can't get through it, I think that's when people just give up on reading. You got to really keep searching until you find a book that completely knocks your socks off.
That's how good Rohn was, though. Yeah. His recommendation list was so damn good that, I got through most of them.
Yeah. I mean, once you find that kind of niche or the people that you want to start paying attention to, typically the recommendations are going to resonate with you a lot, right? So you start finding...
What's your thoughts on stretching out, though? Because I really believe that you just can't read the easy stuff. You have to... because what happens, you fall into the same trap, I think, that the media houses want to grab your attention and keep you there.
Right. For sure.
If you're right, if you're right-leaning, you got to read what's on the left, and vice versa. Yeah. And I think the same thing with literature, same thing.
Well, so on that point, right? So I was into real self-help, even Tony's book, Awaken the Giant, that just spoke to me. I'm like, there's a giant in there. I want to wake it up.
and he has a good way of bringing that out of people.
Right. And then so I got into David Goggins' book, right, which led me down this ultra endurance stuff and doing crazy stuff, which was different, but still self-help, figuring out who you are. But then I read a book called Shantaram.
Okay.
And completely different, right? It's not self-help. It's actually a guy that It's supposedly based on, and they're supposed to be making a movie out of it. If they do, it'll be the best movie ever made.
Okay.
I think his name's Gregory Roberts. Yes, Gregory Roberts. And so he was a convicted felon. He was in like an Australian jail. He was a heroin addict. He had smuggled drugs.
Okay.
And he escaped from this jail, and he found himself in the slums of India,
All right.
basically.
All right.
And he's, he was trying to get back to a life of just like being honest and true. And he again got trapped into this like world of, drug trafficking and stuff. But it is the most beautiful written book on humanity that I've ever read.
Really? What's the title again?
It's called Shantaram.
Shantaram. How do you spell that?
Yeah. Shantaram.
Okay.
So it's funny because when I started using Audible for the first time, they give you free credits, right? And I'm like, I'm going to get an expensive book because they're free, So Shantaram, I think, is like $40-some on Audible, but it's because it's an amazing cast of characters. So when you listen to it, every single character in the book is a different voice, right? Like, so it's not someone reading all the different.
So the cost was involved.
The cost was involved in producing this audio,
Yeah.
so the book's higher, right? But it's, I ended up buying the book itself,
Okay.
so that I could do both. So I could listen and then catch up with, and I like to take a lot of notes. But
Do you do that? I mean,
yeah, my books are
audio makes me audio made me a little lazy on the reading front
Yeah,
because it was so good and easy.
Yeah. Well, so it's weird. I would actually follow along in the book as they're reading because I enjoyed the cast of characters so much.
Right on.
But I really enjoyed like noting stuff and taking notes.
Okay.
Weird. But and honestly, it's a big book, and I'm not even through it. It's been just this book that I go back to here. Like I'll just get to a point in my life where I'm like, I need some deep human, like emotional kind of stuff. And so I'll go back into that book and I'll read a couple chapters and it'll reset me. But I literally will go back into, Audible. You can kind of like flag some of the different things that, and some of the quotes that came out. If you actually Google like Shantaram quotes, it's just like there's all these.
I don't know how I missed this book.
He's just a super, super, super intelligent, like his way of describing and articulating things that he's experiencing. You will resonate with, like they will touch you in some way. You'll think of that person that you were in love with that one time when he talks about the girl that he saw and fell in love with, and when he talks about the person that, like does everything they can to help the other person, you'll think of that person in your life, right? And it makes you start to say, okay, well, geez, I haven't reached out to that person in a while. I gotta, just all of these things start happening to you when you're reading it, and it takes you into so many different places. But I tell people all the time, if they're looking for a beautiful book to read, that is one of them. But for me, that was a major stretch because it's hard for me just to sit down and listen to a story.
Okay.
I like the Tony Robbins kind of thing. Like every chapter is a pump up.
I think that's
let's
unusual.
figure you out,
I think
right?
most people want the story.
They want the story.
It's more mindless.
Yeah. They like even as a write, like when I write, I don't like spending a lot of time on the detail, right? Like I wouldn't describe how amazing this room is. I would do very quick descriptions, and I would focus more on, like you or the conversation or whatever, right?
Sure.
But some authors would spend 5 pages setting up this room, like and the the what you're walking into, and like how does it feel and all of that, and
illuminated insanity.
Right. I'm like, I just want to take all that out and just focus on like, okay, what happened? Just tell me what happened next, right? And so like I'm a lazy reader in that regard, and a lot of people aren't. They love that detail. But
Got it. Yeah,
for him, with him, I loved it because every single just sentence in that book is just, it's phenomenal. I can't imagine anyone reading that book and be like, this is a waste of time.
Okay.
But if you do, put it down and go find something else.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think it's I find myself starting something that was so highly recommended, and I can tell you I force and gut my way through. I get through 2 chapters, I'm like, oh, this is just terrible. Yeah. Like, you know what? Maybe the next chapter will start to resonate. You get to the 3rd chapter.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Right.
One more chapter. But it ends up being a waste of time.
Yeah. 100%. Same thing with podcasts. I mean, someone might be listening to this saying like, I don't like this. Turn it off. And then go search for one of Eric's other podcasts.
Yeah.
Another guest, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing about podcasting, which is great to me, is it's long form.
Yeah.
It's if you're doing it right, it's relaxed. I was listening to a couple major podcasts last night, Chad, and I will tell you that I was a little sad in that the genre is growing so exponentially now. But the organic nature of the essence of what podcasting was well before I was in, and probably yourself was even in the game, it's going away. Yeah. Everything has got like commercials running in and out of stuff now. So the long form conversation, the real long form, whether there's commercials or not, if you're really sitting down for an hour or 2 or 3, letting someone just get it all out, I'm not sure that's going to last in a big way. It started that way with podcasting, but I'm not sure it's going to last that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating because this is a creative outlet. This is an art. This is having real conversations. Like I said, the proximity limitations. When someone sits down and listens to a podcast, you're opening yourself up. You're opening your mind up, right? It's like reading. You're getting different perspectives. You're hearing about different things. Maybe I say something that gives you an idea, that you want to go explore. But everyone's trying to monetize everything. And the worst thing that, not to come back to the news because I hate even talking about the news, but the worst thing that ever happened to the news was they got paid to do the news. And when you start doing for-profit news, it becomes a tricky game. So it's the same thing with everything, like books would get destroyed if like every chapter you had like sheets
I'm waiting for Audible. The crazy part is I hope this never happens. I'm waiting for Audible or one of these companies. I think Audible's the biggest. For every 15 minutes and all of a sudden they slide a commercial in there. And it's I'm a capitalist too. I'm okay with making money, and if that's I applauded Joe Rogan's deal 100%. He's such an icon in podcasting. I'm just saying, though, the essence of sitting down and listening for a long period of time, I hope it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
How do I say this? We do unfiltered, long-form conversation here with no agenda.
Right.
Now, that doesn't fit the commercial mold of podcasting. If someone's going to come in and monetize what we do or something similar, they wouldn't know how to market it because the guests are so random and different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like almost there's no way to strategically do it if you wanted to anyways, in my opinion.
Right.
But the essence of what we do is it's not about anyone having any influence on me or the guest. And the only way I saw to do that was to keep the money component out of it.
Yeah. And that's awesome. That keeps it genuine, keeps it authentic.
I think so.
And then the people that are going to listen anyway, it's kind of like 1,000 true fans, right? Did you ever hear that from Kevin Kelly? So the whole point of that article, 1,000 true fans, was you don't have to, in order to be successful with anything, band, singer, writer, whatever,
right?
Blogger, YouTuber, you don't actually, to be successful, you don't actually need to have hundreds of thousands of people following you. If you have the ability for 1,000 people to be paying attention to what you're doing,
right,
and take value out of what you're doing,
right,
which isn't it's a mountain to climb for sure to build that, but typically when you're authentic and when you're genuine and you put together something like this, and you start talking about things that are meaningful, and bringing back that sense of real conversations that things come out of, people start to find a lot of value in that. And
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I hope so. I think we're all, going back to the whole quarantine thing, one of the things that I think was a silver lining in all of that was where we're going as a society when it comes to technology, right? What happened was the foreshadowing of what is going to happen in 10 years. Everyone will be working from home. There will be no one in buildings, right?
That's an interesting...
There will be no one going to restaurants.
That's an interesting philosophy, and I think that... I don't know about the social. I think the social thing will be around a little longer, but the whole working thing...
We'll talk about the social in a minute, because I think there's some scary components around that.
Okay.
Because what no one knows yet, people know it, but we're not thinking of it all the time, is the element of artificial intelligence and virtual reality.
Right.
So just in a scenario, like in 10 years, probably sooner, you and I will be able to have a conversation just like this in a bar in Maui while you're sitting in your apartment and I'm sitting in my, or wherever you live. I don't know where you live, where you're sitting at home and I'm sitting at
Maui.
home. And, I got a beer in my hand, you got a beer in your hand, whatever. And we're on the beach, and it's the same thing with working out. It's the same thing with.
I don't need part of that though. It's still not organic and real though.
So this was the silver lining for us with the gym, right? What I learned and what gave me a lot of comfort was that people hated working out at home. And I'm like, thank goodness, because everyone, I'm in mastermind gym groups and all this, they are pushing online so hard. There's a massive shift in the market.
What else could they do?
Right. Well, yeah, it opened it up, but you look at things like Peloton, right? Peloton,
I have one.
Peloton created an entirely
and
new.
I don't use it.
Yeah. Well, they created a whole new ecosystem, right? You get into a race, a live race with thousands of people all over the world.
It's not going to apply to everybody, though.
I don't think so. But my point was,
I got nothing out of it.
My point was that especially from a work perspective, everyone's going in that direction.
Yeah.
I have a daughter that's 7 that will never drive a car potentially.
Yeah.
Because they won't be
very possible.
You won't be driving cars when she's 16.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Who knows? So the whole world's shifting. So if anything, I think it gave us a little bit of foreshadowing to say, let's reevaluate the social components of this and make sure that that's really the direction we want to be going, because I think these kind of conversations are meaningful, and I think people should take interest in them, and hopefully they do. And I think going to a bar and hanging out with your friends is important. I hope that happens forever. And I think going to a gym and being a part of the community is really important. I hope that happens forever.
Yeah.
But
I think you're onto something. I think ultimately that we will become creatures that are absolutely homebound. There's no question in my mind, and it'll be done under the guise of convenience. But I think it's going to, for that to happen, its completion, or to have that completely happen in society, I think it's quite a bit of ways off.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, if you say that to anyone right now, they would say, I don't want that. But,
right.
But if you would have told anyone some of the stuff that's happening now 10 years ago, everyone would have said, I don't want that. But technology has a way of creeping its way into our lives, and we all start to say, we can't do without it. If you would have told someone 10 years ago that while parents are at the park, they're going to spend the entire time on Facebook, no one would have said. They would have said, no, I want to watch my kid play at the park.
Right.
Go to a park
Very
now.
good point.
Right. Go to a restaurant now.
That is such
try to watch parents and I'm not shaming.
Point.
It's I do it. I was sitting next to my daughter this morning, and we're watching Dirty Dance. I shouldn't say that. That's her favorite movie. I have to take out scenes, whatever. But I catch myself on the phone, and I'm like, what am I doing? This is so, throw this away.
At least you're realizing it, though.
It's
hard. Both of my kids were, let's see, when they were little, this was well before, I guess it was during the MySpace era, but I wasn't certainly captivated by that on a phone, because the technology of phones wasn't that hot, and I wasn't an early adopter of iPhone. So the Facebook thing kind of got me around 12, 11. So my kids were kind of out of the playground thing by then, but man, I would have had a hard time probably.
Yeah.
I'm glad for me selfishly that it worked that way, that I wasn't distracted like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, technology's great. The wagon wheel became something else, cars and
right.
But it all leads to a level of comfort. And honestly, if you want to live a fulfilling life, you got to actually try to get yourself away from comfort.
There's no question, man. There's no question.
And we're just, technology's taken it. I used to work in technology. One of the big things I did at a company was an evaluation of a massive technology system to come into the company. It was going to cost $5 million a year. I sat down with the guy that was sponsoring it. And I said, the CEO, the CFO, they're going to want a business case. How are we going to pay for this thing,
Right.
And he said, well, it's going to save us tons of money. I said, how? He said, it's going to replace 100 people's jobs. And I'm like, well, that's not good. When technology's going in that direction. Like, what is it that great? You know, what's wrong with the people that do that? You know, like,
Right.
it's just and it's just everything. And I think, again, if you were to tell people that all, like, you know, having the ability to send a robot on a roof before a firefighter goes up there, that's great technology, right? But it's not all good. And I wrote an article that questioned that. And I said, is it really all good? Everything we're doing and everything we're moving towards, is it really the right direction, you know? And you saw during this whole COVID thing, I mean, the whole world had a business, you know, redundancy plan, and it was work from home. We have the technology to do it. Let's just start doing it. And now I think bouncing back, it's kind of gonna be like, well, do we want that? You know, like, I don't know. I'm out of the corporate
I think
scene
corporations
now,
will probably want it from a cost standpoint.
Yeah.
Although I would imagine from a management standpoint, it has to be very difficult or add a whole lot of new challenges or obstacles.
yeah, it's hard. I mean, the social element's what makes it hard. Even the guy that, you know, WordPress.com, the guy that runs that, Matthew, whatever his name is, they're a distributed company. They're all over the world. And he has said that they have an event every year. And the one thing that really, like, hits him every year is, like, how awesome it is when they're all together.
Of course.
And they're all interacting. You know, is it good to be distributed? Yeah. I mean, is it awesome to be able to work from home? Yeah. Is there a sacrifice to the social?
Of course.
Yes.
Of
100%.
course.
So
When the web started, remember this clear as a bell, there was people that were predicting that video conferencing was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be web-based. It was going to be
Right.
available to everyone. That was early 2000s. And I can remember reading so much about how amazing this is going to be, that people be able to work from home, because everybody hated the drudgery of going to work, right? If I could just stay at home and do my work here, it'd be so much better. I'd love life so much more. I wouldn't have to get dressed. I wouldn't have to put pants on, right? Whatever. But that happened. Yeah. Fast forward 15 years later, that happened.
right.
And now everybody's pissed off about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Be careful what you wish for.
Well, 100%. And that was kind of my point, that in 10 years, you know, some of the things I were coming up with, people were probably listening, saying, like, I don't want that. No, let's not do that.
Right.
That's stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
right.
they're talking about virtual reality sex. Literally, like, you can put on a headset, you put on sensors, and you can have an intimate relationship with someone that's not even by you. This is stuff they're talking about. Like, these things are happening. They're in the
I think
making.
that technology is going to keep interfacing on the human experience, and I don't think it's good. And hopefully, it's many, 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 many moons from now. But yeah, I get it. But I don't think you can ever substitute
social.
I don't think the human experience, right? It's going to be fascinating, though. I kind of wish, in a way, I could live a couple more lifetimes just to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. So here you go. To live a great life, read by yourself. Get out of the house and socialize. And while you're socializing, be open-minded.
Yeah, and don't have sex by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want the full human experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to throw it out there.
Spend some time with yourself. Be self-reflective. Read some books. Go to a bar. Be social. Be open-minded. And then sleep with someone that's not, you know, on a camera.
Yeah, exactly right. No, I totally get that. Let me talk a little bit about nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay. It's such a incredible industry in this country that's wrought with fraud and from everything from Archer Daniels Midland, all the big food production companies, all the way down to this latest internet protein powder that they're trying to get people to be influencers on, that your buddies down the street is trying to push you with a code, right?
100%.
I mean, it's the everything in between.
Yeah.
So the consumer is really fucked.
Yeah.
Because they're told everything from low fat, low carbs, vegan, pescatarian.
Yeah.
I mean, carnivore. And you see shining examples of everybody living these different, vastly different eating plans. And they're all built and full of energy that you know, and they look great. No one knows what the hell to do. Right. So being that there's all that confusion, what do you prescribe to?
Okay, so I'll give a caveat here. So as a gym owner, I wear the entrepreneurial hat a lot more than I wear like the nutritionist, dietitian, you know, like I'm not those technicians. Like I'm good friends with a registered dietitian, Andrew Wade. He's phenomenal. We as a facility have a nutrition coach, Maddie Martinez. She's amazing. And what you said is absolutely correct. So me being even the entrepreneur in the fitness space, I will say that I'm probably an expert compared to 99% of the population, but there are people that are actually technicians that know this stuff way better than I do. So I'm not going to play like the expert on the show here, but I will say this. What people should be doing is drinking a ton of water, 60% of your body weight in water a day in ounces. You should be walking a ton. You should be sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night and going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time and not having any distractions like light and TV and those kind of things. And when it comes to food, you should be eating a whole food diet. Whole food protein, whole food carbs, whole food fat. The absolute 100% truth, I had Andrew Wade on my podcast. He's the dietitian. He will say this 1,000 times over. Your body prefers carbohydrates as its fuel source. That is the preferred source of fuel for your body. You need carbs. So just the societal viewpoint that carbs are bad or that's what's putting on the weight is fundamentally flawed. It's a really, really bad misconception. The challenge is, and a lot of people that are in the nutrition space, they don't like to say this, but I say it all the time. There's good carbs and there's bad carbs.
Right.
You know, they don't like to put a negative connotation to food because there's a mental aspect to it for people. But the reality is there's bad carbs. Like simple sugars are bad. Don't consume simple sugars, right?
Give examples of that.
Bread, white bread, right? They put sugar in
Refined,
bread.
refined,
Yeah,
refined
refined sugar. Yeah. Pizza, these are not good carbohydrates. So the problem is people don't understand what good carbohydrates are. A sweet potato is a great carbohydrate, right? It's right out of the ground. There's nothing processed about it. Right. There's nothing refined about it. Right. There's no manufacturer taking that and putting a whole bunch of stuff in it, putting it in a box, putting it on a shelf, and then you put it in the microwave, right? It's probably one of the best things that you can eat, and it's a carbohydrate. It's going to fuel your body. Protein is for muscle. It's building the muscle, right? And fat, your just body fundamentally needs fats, the right kind of fats, right? Avocado oil is a fat. Just a different nut oils. There's different types of fats, right? Your body needs all three of those. Those are your macronutrients, right? At the highest level. And so when you see all these diets, like carb restriction, it's really what we're up against is a massive multi-billion trillion dollar machine. And it's getting worse because not only do you have companies that are pushing bad stuff out there, we have an entire ecosystem that's set up to be, it's fundamentally flawed. It's hard. It would be hard to replace it, right? The slaughtering of chickens that are all stuffed in a cage. We have so many people out there to feed. It's hard to get away from the system we have in place, my personal opinion. But there are, for people that want to educate themselves, there's definitely things that they should be doing and eating, to get better source of nutrients into their body. So what I was saying was to add on to the flawedness. Now we have these multi-level marketing companies coming out, right? And I'm not trying to, put anyone down or anything like that. But the reality is, people are using products, they're getting benefits from those products, and then they're pushing those products down. And I literally have had people tell me, you don't understand, watch this video, this person's an expert. And I'm like, they're not an expert and they have no idea what they're talking about. This is just the society we live in now, where the everyday person started taking something, they lost 20 pounds, now they're the expert. Everyone's like, I want what you're doing. And they have no idea what they're actually doing.
It's intellectual laziness.
It is, right? So
there's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's all surface level thinking. No one's really going deep on the topics. And it's frustrating because, yes, a lot of this stuff will cause immediate weight loss. And it's instant gratification. We live in a world of instant gratification. The challenge is, and you have to ask, I talked with Andrew Wade about this on the show, like it's literally like the show Survivor. Anyone that lasts 39 days on that show that didn't go on all the rewards, they're starving. Like they lost a ton of weight. They went on a massively caloric deficit diet, right? So just at the highest level for people, not to bore anyone, but your body runs on, so calories is the measure of energy that your body runs on, right? Everyone's different. Our organs are functioning, our heart's pumping, our brain's pumping, whatever. we're burning calories all day, every
Sure.
day, right? So for any given person, let's say me, my maintenance calorie level is 3,000.
Okay.
So in theory, if I consume more than 3,000 calories on a daily basis and I continue to do that, I'm going to put on weight. If I consume less on a daily basis, I'm going to lose weight. That's kind of like the high level thinking, right? So then one says, okay, well, if that's true, go on a 1,500 calorie deficit or 1,000 calorie, So eat 1,000 calories a day and now you'll start to lose a lot of weight fast. The challenge is that your metabolism slows way down, right?
Because adjusts.
It's saying you're not feeding me, so I'm not going to do what I was doing before. So people go on these massive caloric deficit diets and then they don't give themselves carbs. So now your body's going to try to start burning protein as its fuel source, which is really bad. If you restrict the protein enough, you go into like what they call the ketosis and you start to burn fat as your fuel source, which is a whole nother. Keto is like the most flawed market. It's really bad. I'm not saying it's bad. Like the registered dietitian, he will prescribe people to go on a ketogenic diet, but they have very specific things happening inside their body.
We do absolutes in this country, don't we?
Yeah.
We do absolutes.
Yeah.
We rush to the extreme of the other side.
Yeah. I mean, like the person that was never able to lose weight, a dietitian put them on a ketogenic diet. They lost a lot of weight because they have hormonal things happening in their body that required them to go onto that diet. And then everyone says, I'm going to go on the ketogenic diet. I'm just going to start burning fat as my fuel source. Like, there's no long-term science on whether or not that's good. So, I mean, people will argue it all day long. My challenge with it is that people don't fundamentally understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So they're just doing it because they saw someone else lose a ton of weight.
Right.
So anyway, I think for people just to go on these like massive caloric deficit diets, they don't understand. They're slowing their metabolism down, and then that doesn't become sustainable because people have to eat. And so what they do is they'll end up getting out of that. They'll go back to eating, but their metabolism's now not working. So they'll put weight on faster.
Of course.
Right? So the person that's on there
That's
pushing...
the yo-yo.
Yeah, the yo-yo, exactly. So the person pushing the candy bar diet as a part of an MLM program, buy these candy bars.
The candy
eat
bar
these
diet. That's a thing?
They're out there, yeah.
That's a thing, really?
I mean, I don't want to call that one out specifically, but it's a really big one.
Wait, the candy bar diet is a thing.
It's a thing, yeah. So what they'll do is they'll put you on you're not allowed to exercise, and in the first 2 or 3 weeks, they give you candy bars and they call them fueling bars.
Okay.
So basically it's like your replacement for food. And so, people start losing a ton of weight. All these people start posting pictures on the Facebook. Now they got all these people under them. They're making money because they're a part of this MLM thing.
Yeah.
And it just is like this compounding problem that we're like, oh my gosh, you guys are going to be like devastated 3 years from now because you're not going to be able to sustain that lifestyle for very long. And then your metabolism, you shut it down. So now you're going to start eating and put on a ton of weight.
It's basically come down to different food choices, right? Isn't that the nuts of, if you want to do it right?
Yeah.
That's really, in volume, of course, volume of food too, but different food choices.
Yeah, there's arguments for timing. So I had John Denk on. We talked about intermittent fasting, stuff like that. There's,
what's your
there's science out there. I think it 100% works, and I think it, well, I shouldn't say 100%. I talked with Andrew Wade about this, right? The idea of not eating all day long is a good idea.
Okay.
Just eat in windows and then give your body time to metabolize the food. So intermittent fasting, what a lot of people think of it, they think of it as like a window of time where they're not going to eat. So say you're on a 12-hour fast. Well, you stop eating it, and you can pick your hours, doesn't matter, but just as an example, I stop eating at 8 p.m., and I don't start eating until 8 a.m.
Well, 12 hours really isn't even a fast,
That's
right?
not even really a fast.
It should be like 16 to 18 minimum.
That would be an easy one, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So then like a longer one would be 6 p.m., right? So now we're at a 14-hour fast.
Yeah.
So you stop eating at 6 p.m. and you don't start again until 8 a.m., right? Or 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. Now we're at a 16-hour fast, right? So stop eating. Last meal of the day, 6 p.m., go get some rest, go to bed.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, break fast is at 10 a.m. And now you have a 16-hour fast, right? So the arguments with that a little bit are that like you actually need a lot of protein in the morning when you're first waking up. You want protein.
You believe that?
I do. Yeah.
There's a lot of thought out there that
I
you
know.
really don't need anything until maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that client plays more into the intermittent fasting side. So when it gets into these topics, it does get deep, and there are a lot of different
Sure.
perspectives and
Sure.
points, and it's hard for me. What I tell people at this point is you got to figure out what's going to work best for your body. I actually have probably been intermittent fasting on accident for a long time, just because I eat dinner and I go to bed and I don't really eat for a while in the morning.
Right.
I kind of
Right.
wake up and I don't eat for a late part of the morning. So
Right.
I'm on a pretty good fast, and honestly, I have my best workouts in the morning when I haven't eaten at all.
Do you feel you're better cognitively when you are slightly hungry?
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
Me too.
100%. And I mean, people that do the fasting, intermittent fasting, they have levels of sensory awareness. Like you'll
It's
hear people-
intoxicating. You have to
Yeah.
watch, because for me, it becomes, I don't know. The journey that I've been on this past year, I can tell you where I'm at right now.
Well, you cut out sugar, you cut out red meat.
Yeah,
right?
I went into extreme, but you know what? I want to do something different.
Yeah.
I didn't extreme. I don't think I did anything radical, but I really altered all the crap I was eating. I really did a full scale change, which
Yeah.
I don't think was radical. It was just smart.
It's just smart eating,
But I will
That's
tell
Whole
you,
Foods, like,
yeah.
that's the
So I
idea
don't have an
behind
appetite now. I just don't think I eat because I know I have to.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to go 2 or 3 days without eating. I could do that with no problem.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the longer I go without eating, I will tell you, the sharper and more mentally alert I become. Almost like, wow, I feel like it was 20 years have gone by in terms of cognitive ability.
Right.
But you can't live that way. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
So I believe in the fasting part of it, but I also believe that, like you said, that it's not for everybody,
Right.
and every diet is not for everybody. And I think people are not patient enough to find out what works for them
Yeah.
in conjunction with their doctor, right? I don't think that
100%,
people
yeah.
are patient to do that, Chad.
Yeah, right. And the frustrating thing is, for a lot of people, they could probably go see a registered dietitian on their insurance and
Yeah.
get really specific help for their particular situation.
Right.
To follow these fad diets and these multi-level marketing, what people need to know is that they have one goal in mind, and it is not for you to live a healthy lifestyle. It is for them to make money. And I'm not talking about the person that's pushing it. I'm talking about it all the way to the top, the people that
sure.
created it.
Sure.
Their number one goal is not to create a healthy world. It's not. They saw an opportunity to say, this is a big problem for
Yeah.
people. People
Yeah.
struggle with weight, and they're playing on that. And we are on the other side of it. Literally, did you ever see The Newsroom,
Yeah.
the HBO show, where they try to start telling the true narratives around the news, right? But they're up against the monsters.
Of course.
And that's what we're like. It's so hard for, so Maddie, our nutrition coach, everyone she works with, she puts them on more food to lose weight.
That's interesting.
And they're all like, what? And it's because she's trying to get their metabolism to start being completely optimized. And it's not, a lot of them are just coming off of crash diets, or they could be, or they don't fundamentally understand the macro balancing of how much carbs versus proteins versus fats. So giving them a full balanced diet
I
and
get
some
it.
education around the food.
I get it.
But yeah, the things you're doing, from a cleansing perspective, just to get away from some of the foods that are out there,
I reduced my sodium. Reducing my sodium had an amazing benefit. I don't mean dangerously low levels. I mean, certainly I'm doing it right, but haphazardly, Chad, I was just eating. I don't want to tell you what I found myself eating milligrams a day. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's part of the weight loss. It's a small part, but it's part of the weight loss equation. Am I right? I mean, sodium retention is water retention, and high blood pressure and all the nonsense that goes along with it.
Yeah, 100%. Even I said to someone the other day, I said, cut back on sugar, watch your milk. And they're like, milk? I'm like,
Eliminate
milk
it.
has a ton of sugar.
Yeah,
Gatorade has a ton of sugar.
I don't touch that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even have
That's
any
good.
inclination to even I don't know. But again, I'm not saying that my way is for anybody else.
Yeah.
I just know what worked for me.
100%. Yeah.
But it's so funny. I heard Rogan say the other day, he was talking to, oh God, who was he talking to? And it was, Mark, familiar with Mark Sisson? I'll get into him in a second. But Rogan was on, and they were talking about lifestyle or something. They were talking about having to eating the pie or not eating the pie or whatever, and Rogan just said, what about just like not taking the fork and putting it up to your fucking mouth? Learn a little discipline. Like, why is that not being talked about? Like the whole COVID.
Right.
His argument, which is a good argument, I will tell you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is that we have this pandemic, we have this virus circulating in society, and we're going to rush to get you a pill or a jab in your arm so you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
What about addressing that 75% of the population is morbidly obese, according to regular BMI numbers from the government, right?
Yeah.
And our diets are shit. Fast food is everywhere.
Yeah.
Let's just let them smoke, eat, and drink through the pandemic, even more than normal.
Yeah.
But we'll get them a pill or a jab to fix the virus.
Yeah.
They don't talk about changing your... See, my thing was I want to get healthy to try to minimize my risk of getting ill.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
That was the whole journey. It just made sense to me. But discipline was the one thing, though. I can do that. A lot of people, can't.
Yeah. Well, Jocko Willink has a great
Love
quote
him.
that's discipline equals freedom, right? And it's in everything. Like, if you have structure, if you have discipline in your life, if you have discipline with your sleep, you'll have freedom in your day, right? Because you'll have energy. If you have discipline in your diet, you'll have freedom in your health. If you have discipline with money, you'll have freedom in your wealth, right? It's just everything. Where you start to lack in discipline, you start to lack in the quality of whatever you're not disciplined in. And so it comes back to the technology, actually, where, again, this is another area of technology that you have to ask, is it good? Because it's leading to a level of comfort and unaccountability, non-accountability that people have, right? Like, if I can just get fixed by getting a shot in my arm, okay, awesome. I didn't have to do anything. I have to change my lifestyle. I don't have to change my eating habits. I don't have to change. I mean, the reality is, my personal belief is everything, like a lot of the issues that are going to come from the spine and the gut. So if your spine is not functioning properly, you're going to have issues to your organs, because that's everything sending the nerve signals to your organs. And if your gut's not functioning properly, you're going to have issues. And so when you think about keeping your gut healthy, if you're not eating the right foods, if you're eating poison, you're going to be poisoned. You're going to be poisoned, and we are, and people don't think of it like that, but we're eating poison. Like, we're literally eating poison.
I would think so. Sugar being in any form of sugar being or refined sugars being the biggest culprit, right?
Yeah. I mean, just think of the process, right? Like, how you go to a McDonald's and eat a hamburger. Where did that hamburger come from? Well, it was frozen, but then where did it come from? It was in a box, and then a box was on a truck, and that truck came from some massive slaughtering farm in Idaho where the cows were sick to begin with, because they're not grass-fed cows. They're being fed crap. They're being stuck into a little box, and so it's just like the journey of that food compared to, like, Rogan will talk about this. You kill a deer in the wild and you take it back and you start to eat that deer. I mean, that's fresh meat, like, if you're a person that eats meat, compared to, like, that whole process of getting food out to people. That's what I talked about. Like, it's hard to fix the problem because we have a lot of people, and the distribution model's really broken of how to get people healthy food. But if you start to think about these things like the way you think about them now, and you get discipline around your eating, you can completely transform your life. There's good food options out there.
It wasn't very hard, though. That's the thing about it, was, to me, there's a lot of hard things in my life, and there's a lot of things I'm still failing at in life. But when it comes to just deciding what to eat and what not to eat, it became like an eye-opener. When COVID started, I'm like, wow, this is something. I'm really out of weight. I'm overweight. I'm out of shape.
Yeah.
What the hell am I doing? But it wasn't a hard decision to go walking 90 minutes a day, to get out every day, to have a routine to fix that problem.
Right.
And I just solved the problem. That's how I view it. Whereas I think the rest of society, I think the comfort that food gives psychologically, I think, is so strong in our society that people just, smart, educated people from diverse backgrounds, they still succumb to that one thing. Yeah. It's interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think I did a podcast called The Path of Most Resistance, and it was on David Goggins. And the whole concept is that the easy path is always the wrong path, typically. Like, if it's easy, it's wrong. And so, as a consumer, like, we get
The Obstacle Was the Way by Ryan Holiday.
Yes,
Familiar with that?
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Holiday, his other one,
Stoicism,
ego is the enemy.
Ego is the enemy.
And obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
And like the quote that actually changed my life was, the guy's name's escaping me, but it was, life happens at the end of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And so I started like wondering, like, what does that actually mean? And then the other one is, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek, right? And so you start thinking about these things, but when you bring it back to like this conversation, it's really easy to make bad choices, right?
Right.
But when people think about changing their life in a good way, they think that it has to be this really like overwhelming mountain that they're going to climb. And the reality is, like, you can make simple choices that are going to have a drastic impact. Look for the low-hanging fruit, just try to get some better sleep. Try to drink more water throughout the day. Try to walk a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Try to start being more functional with your, like, just integrating a little bit of functional fitness into your daily routine. Right. And then when it comes to food, get away from the things that are high in sugar, start drinking some, unsweetened almond milk or something like that.
What's wrong with drinking water?
That
just drives me crazy. Like, everybody's looking for an excuse to drink anything but water, right?
I saw someone post something saying, like, can someone please tell me the best pre-workout out there? And like my friend commented and said, water. It's the other
thing too I wanted to share with you too, and it's a little personal, but it's relevant. The biggest change I made, besides eating different things, was just getting out of the house every day by myself and spending 90 minutes or more by myself walking at a good clip. And I wasn't walking fast in the beginning because I was so out of shape.
Yeah.
But that has been a game changer. And I'm not saying that's entirely the reason for the weight loss, but it's a component of it. But it's also a component of me feeling a hell of a lot better.
100%.
I mean, that time alone with a podcast or with nothing, maybe just noise-reducing headphones so I hear nothing, music, whatever, that 90 minutes, it made the COVID pandemic bearable for me.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anybody, you don't have to go run 10 miles. I don't like running anymore because of the ankles and the knee pain and the hip pain. But you know what? In my mid-50s, 90 minutes, an hour. If you can't do 90 minutes, do an hour. But that 90 minutes to me is almost sacred to me now. I have to have it every day. I am addicted. And usually I do it like around 10 at night, and I come home and shower, go to bed. That's it. That's how I end the day. And I won't change that. I have no intentions on changing that ever.
Yeah.
Again,
that's
ever.
Awesome.
Ever.
Yeah.
That simple, stupid thing to make big loops around my hometown here at night when no one's around, just time by myself. But that, getting in motion, you just instantly feel better.
Yeah.
Instantly feel better.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. You don't have to run.
Right.
If running's not part of what you can do, then walk, right?
Yeah.
Just walk.
Right. Yeah, it's
so
funny.
Simple.
We launched a challenge this last time over the December shutdown, and it was just on Facebook. Like, we had a group, and every day you're supposed to post what you did, right?
Right.
And a little bit of my role is to try to keep people motivated, inspired, So sometimes I do some really hard shit just so they're like, oh man, if he did that, I'm going to go do this, right?
Right.
But I did this thing where I FedEx Hill is my hill. Like, that's kind of like my retreat. Like, if I am having a rough time in life, I find myself at the bottom of FedEx Hill going up it, and I don't go fast, I go slow or whatever. But I got up one morning, I think it was 4 a.m, and it was a whiteout. So it was beautiful snow, and it was a little cold, but when you start moving, it's not bad.
Of course.
And so I go to the bottom of FedEx Hill. I actually parked like way off and in the snow pile, and I get out and like I step into a huge puddle. So I'm like, great. 4 a.m. hill climb and my feet are soaked.
That's the worst.
But so I start climbing the hill, right? And I get to the top and it's beautiful. Everything's so still. It's so silent. And I'm kind of thinking through a lot of things, and things are starting to like make sense. Stuff's coming out.
It's amazing what walking will do.
Yeah. So then I think I ended up doing up and down 8 times, which I think up and back is a mile. So it's a half mile up, half mile down. So I did like 8 miles. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, because I was going pretty slow. But so 2 hours later, it's like 6:30 or whatever. really early in the morning, and I feel amazing. It was probably one of the best experiences of the year for me. Just being out there, being so quiet, like the world was just quiet, and everything was still, and it was beautiful. Like there's nothing like a whiteout, like being out in that fresh air hitting you.
Absolutely right.
But then when I posted saying like, hey, I did FedEx Hill this morning 8 times, people are like, are you out of your friggin' mind? Like, are you crazy? And I'm thinking like, it's hard over Facebook to explain like what that morning meant to me. So I make a comment like, no, it was actually really enjoyable,
Yeah.
But people don't really get how enjoyable it was for me. And
you can't explain it to them.
It's hard to explain.
I mean, they can do it, and hopefully some of them try it and do it and experience it themselves, but I don't think that anything that requires effort, there's a lot of disdain for it in today's society, especially on our social media platforms. There's disdain for the success of others through the terrible human trait of envy, but anything that requires effort is either looked upon skeptically, in disbelief, or will try to be criticized.
Yeah, 100%. For me, this comes back to the I have this overwhelming mantra now of like just trying to figure out what I'm really capable of doing, like just the potential, right? But it's not in terms of like, so I got into just I was never a runner, but I started running a little bit. Not to go in the backdrop there, but someone told me about this 10-mile trail run through Salt Fork, Ohio. I used to go there as a kid, so I was really intrigued by that. And I'm like, awesome, I want to go on this trail run. And when I was up there, it was the same thing. You're in the woods going around this lake, and it's beautiful. And so to me, winning wasn't winning. Like initially I had thoughts of like, I'm going to win this race,
Sure.
And or I'm going to be a top 10, or I'm going to train to get to the top 10, whatever. And it's funny, I actually went 2 miles off course, and a group of us did, and we realized we were off course, and we got back, and when we got to the halfway point, I realized I was 2 miles off course. And immediately I'm thinking like, oh no, my time's going to be screwed up. I'm not going to take the place that I thought I was going to take. And then, it turns out I took like 180 out of like 200 or whatever, and if I wouldn't have went 2 miles off course, I would have taken 170th, whatever. The point was that didn't matter at all. And so what I started to learn was that winning wasn't about winning the race. It was about crossing finish lines, metaphorically or, literally. Sure. And so having my daughter see me just out there trying to better myself, trying to figure out, can I do this? Can I do this race? And then being in the race and the element of just being there versus where I was, which was on a couch, drinking a beer, criticizing professional athletes. Like this bum, we should trade him.
You have a lot of company there, buddy.
Yeah, I know. It drives me actually crazy. And I don't try to be mean to people, but I see like parents living vicariously through their kids, and I'm like,
how can you not?
I literally wrote a piece on this too, where I just talked about like, I don't want to tell my daughter she can be anything. I want to show her. And the only way you can show them is by you challenging yourself to do stuff all the time and figuring out like this for you to pull this together and to be able to launch the show is amazing. Like just to be able to say like, look, this is a challenge. I'm gonna see if I can figure it out. And then you start pushing it.
There's a challenge to everything.
There's a way of not doing this, right? You could be sitting at a home or out in a bar, or there's 1,000 places you could be right now, but you're doing this awesome thing and pushing yourself to see like,
things just feel right sometimes. Like when COVID hit, there was the list. I share with you, I was not permitted to work real estate. We have some mutual friends. You're aware what was going on, so we weren't permitted to work for a while, which was just, and a lot of people had it worse than me. But for my little world, it kind of sucked.
Oh yeah,
in that I didn't know what to do.
Right.
So after the first week of watching television, like, wow, I don't usually watch television. I needed to do something.
Yeah.
And it was like, I knew that I needed to be doing something other than what everybody else was generally going to do. And we had this show, and we had some guests in the other room. We were trying to figure this away. So my mind went immediately to figuring out what I can do with what I'm given.
Yeah.
And that just goes back to the way I try to live my life. It's far from perfect, but it really is about challenges. If I'm not being challenged, the only time you ever find me bored is if I really cannot internalize anything that is challenging me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this show is the same challenge that I felt 20 years ago when I wanted to quit corporate and sell guitars. People thought I was nuts, but I felt it. When I decided to start talking to people down in this spare room that I had been renting and create this, I don't think a lot of people understood. And I'm not sure I understood completely.
Yeah.
But I just felt I needed to be doing it because it was something to do that was challenge. It's a funny word, but it was something that I wasn't familiar with, and I'm going to go try this.
Yeah.
No fear of that. And I can tell from our conversations now and prior, you have that risk gene as well. Am I right?
A little bit, yeah. I think, and it's awesome that you did that. I love just hearing your whole story there because I think that's so cool. The reality is, and I think a lot of people live their entire lives without knowing this, but the reality is that nothing worthwhile has an easy path. Mm-hmm. There is no easy path to fulfillment. And so that doesn't, and like that quote I said where life happens at the end of your comfort zone, you start saying, well, what does that really mean? Does that mean that I have to quit my job and move to wherever?
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
No, at least for me, what it meant was you need to start pushing yourself in a direction that you're drawn to.
Right.
With the knowledge that you're going to be challenged
mm-hmm.
and that at the end of that or during that, you're going to start to figure out more about yourself.
No question.
What your soul's like.
No question.
Who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that, there will be a sense of fulfillment that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
No question.
And it's funny because I do some accountability stuff now where like I'll just work with people that are in a rut, right? And I had a kid come in and he wanted to be in physically good shape for like this, boot camp he was going to be going into. And I said, well, I'm not going to train you physically. Like we have a gym that does that. You can sign up to the gym.
Right.
But I'm going to try to get you mentally ready so that when that day shows up, like you're going to be able to do it physically because that'll come. But like I want you to know mentally that you're going to be able to do anything they throw at you, right? And so I started, I asked everyone this. I said, like, I just started asking them questions. Mm-hmm. And the one question I asked them was, what's something that you've done in the last 6 months that you're really proud of? And he stared at me like, I don't have an answer to that question. And that like kind of shook me up a little bit. So then I started asking other people that question. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough question to answer on the spot. But even for someone listening right now, for them to just think, and this isn't me coming from a condescending place. I'm not like, I have stuff all the time I'm proud of. It's not it at all.
Right.
I mean, I spent a large part of my life where I had nothing to be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things like being a good dad or a good mom. And that stuff is, it's definitely 100%, those are things you should be proud of. But let's take it one level up. Outside of the norm, the mm-hmm. things you're doing at work, the mm-hmm. family stuff that you're doing at home, what have you done that you've looked back and said, I can't believe I did that?
Yeah.
Even if you failed,
right.
saying, I can't believe I tried.
Yeah. To challenge yourself. What are they challenging?
Right.
Where are the challenges in your life?
What are you doing to really challenge yourself?
Right.
And the reality is that some people just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
There's just people that I finally come to learn that there's some people that just don't care. They want to drink beer, mm-hmm. sit on a couch, smoke cigarettes, have fun conversations, and live the rest of their life that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is 100% fine. Mm-hmm. But for the people that are a little bit different, wired a little bit different, like me, like you, that are trying to figure out what to do, right? Like I spent a lot of my life saying, what should I do though? The answer became just challenge yourself with something, right? Yeah. So for me, it became a Spartan race. Like I was a bum and I saw a Spartan race. I'm like, I'm going to go do that Spartan race.
Right.
Which led me into running, which led me into long mile running, which led me into endurance running, which led me into opening a gym. It was kind of like these seeds that were being planted.
Yeah, but isn't that's the beauty of life,
right?
Man.
Yeah.
The tapestry of it. But none of those things will ultimately happen if you don't take the first risk.
Yeah, you just got to go down a path. That's why I said like something that draws you. If it's music, if it's podcasting, mm-hmm. if it's like business, you just got to going, and you'll start planting seeds, and some of those seeds won't manifest, but at the end of the day, 2020 is hindsight, right? Like, you'll look back and there will be a lot of dots that you'll start to connect of things that you did and how it all unfolded. I have a podcast, but that was just a seed that I planted that ended up like me getting really into learning more about entrepreneurship, and then opening up, and then now I'm here talking with you, and the books that I read and some of the things that came out of that are now relevant topics. So it's just, I think people have a hard time getting started, and it literally is just that, take the first step, do something to challenge yourself.
We don't like to be uncomfortable.
No.
And I don't think it's always fear. I think fear is part of it, but we don't like being uncomfortable. And because to be an American right now, it's not too hard. I mean, to live here doesn't take too much, doesn't take too much effort, first world problems.
Well, speaking of Ryan Holiday, so he, which for the listeners that don't, he was the guy that wrote
Look him up.
The Obstacle is the Way and Ego's the Enemy. So
he's the modern day Stoic, I think.
Yeah. So he's young too. I mean, that guy's pretty young. He's a very, very, very smart guy. But he sent out an article when COVID first hit. And it wasn't a, hey, this isn't a big deal. It was kind of a, hey, this has happened in history a lot. And, if you look at the Marcus Aurelius days, I think in the paper, I don't want to quote him incorrectly, but I mean, it was like 10 years, hundreds of millions of people. And it was, they had nothing. Like, I mean, they didn't have food to begin with, let alone like when something like that hit. And so the reality is that we're living in the easiest times in the history of the entire world. And if you look on Facebook, you will think that we're living in the worst times,
of course,
and the hardest times.
Of course.
And like, I'm not downplaying. Like, I'm a business owner that just went through COVID. Things were hard, but in perspective, they weren't really hard.
It's all perspective.
We gotta toughen up a little bit.
It's all perspective.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend of mine, Rocco Koza, the attorney. We come on, and his whole thing is that it's so damn easy that we've now made excuses.
Yeah.
We've really made excuses for laziness like we have never made before.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's horrible. I mean, think about that. That's really sad. It's sad, that concept.
Yeah.
We make excuses for laziness.
That's my ultimate thing for the one thing I cannot stand with people. I'm very open-minded. I love all kinds of people. I cannot be around a person that has excuses, because they're just doing themselves a disservice. Like, if you have an excuse for everything and no accountability, you're just not a person that I want to be around. Like, you're going to be in anger around my feet. I can't deal with that. I think you get excuses or results. It's one or the other. Like, there is no in between, right?
Yeah.
So that drives me crazy. But yeah, I think we need to toughen up a little bit. As a society, we're getting a little lazy.
Well, I think there's an amazing quality of life in this country, and like you said, we have plenty of reasons to be happy. There's so much amazing things happening, but boy, just the other thing about the human condition which drives me insane, and probably is my biggest pet peeve. My biggest pet peeve has to be envy. Yeah. Envy is the one thing that I don't not only understand, but I also watch it destroy so many things in our lives. And envy's touched me and destroyed elements of my life. And I'm also here to tell you, it wasn't my envy. It was people I was in business with.
Yeah.
They were partners. It was clients. It was some customers of mine, friends around me in my sphere. I can watch all these moving parts, and you see relationships, and you see business ventures, and you see a lot of destruction based upon envy of what other people have, are doing, relationships. It really destroys so much, and it's a level of immaturity that is now knows no age demographic at all. It is so heavily through society, through what we see and indulge and we lust for. I don't have an answer for it. All I can do is point it out because it has destroyed so much of the world around me, and I just won't partake in it.
Yeah.
I just won't. I don't care what someone does. And I would admire you if you have something that I think is awesome, and I could see myself enjoying something like that someday. I'll either want to know how you did it, or I'll just look at it from afar and say, hey, okay, there's a little carrot for me to go get. But to lust after what someone else has or has done, or their money or whatever, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I know. It's so hard to get caught in that trap. Like ego is the enemy, envy is the enemy. And that quote I said from Tony Robbins, like, turn your expectations into appreciation, your whole world changes. I mean, when you expect to have what other people have, or to expect to be treated, like, if you just get out of that mindset and turn it back into a mindset of gratitude and just peace and being thankful for what you have. For me, there's a great quote that says, I don't fear failure, I fear regret. And that is what drives me every day. Like, I don't fear, 30 years from now, hopefully I live that long, but being on my deathbed one day, I'm not going to be telling myself like, man, I'm so mad at you that you opened that gym and it didn't work. Hopefully it works. But if it didn't, what I would have said was, you should have opened the gym, Right. So that's what drove that decision to leave corporate America and the easy life and all the money I was making, and just say, like, let's go broke and let's open up a gym. Because like I told you, by the time I'm 40, I'll be a millionaire, I'll be bankrupt, but I'll be happy either way, because I challenged myself and I got into something, and I really figured out who I am, and I'm learning what I can do and what I can't do, and I'm growing as a person, right? So that fear of regret drives me a lot. And when it comes to things like envy, I think what you don't want to happen is for that to consume your life so much that you actually end up on your deathbed with tons of regret, because you spent your whole life focused on what other people had and what other people did. And you didn't figure out actually what you wanted and what you could do and the potential that you had. And if that's all you focus on, honestly, everything will come to you. Everything you want will eventually come to you.
I agree. I don't want to confuse ego. I mean, I don't have envy. I don't understand it, but I struggle with ego just like all of us do. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have an ego. We all have an ego. All of us. I struggle with that on a daily basis, but I always do I understand the struggle. That's the difference, I think, is age and maturity will give that to you. But that humility thing, coming into every relationship and starting every human interaction with humility, that has served me well. Yeah. That has 100%. Served me well. And it's good. I don't like the word advice, but it's a good life lesson. And maybe you just have to be on this earth a period of time before you kind of get that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Ego's good to have ego. I mean, we're built to have ego for a reason, but it's a powerful thing that can consume us. We have to be really careful with it. No question. I deal with this a lot. I play a balance between having, I gave up on the idea. I don't think I was ever bought into the idea, but I gave up on the idea of being like what they call an influencer now, right? Like the person that everyone pays attention to and likes, and they likes all the Facebook posts and all of that. Like I don't care about any of that now. I care about doing things that I get a lot of value out of, mentally, physically, and whatever. And for the people that take interest in that, or that I can help by doing that, or inspire or motivate or whatever, then that's awesome, right? Yeah. But it's kind of like a fine line, because I come on and I'll talk about things, and it's like, I don't want that to come from a place of ego, because in all reality, like, if I talk about running this race, it was slow and there's 3 million people out there that could beat me. That wasn't like, I'm not talking about it from a place of, I think I'm better than all these other people. And that's the whole point. Like, I think it's just around figuring out who you are and what you can do and challenging yourself, but sometimes some of the things I do, they come off as this, like, I actually posted a picture of me. Maybe this was like ego driven, but
I did this big run, and I felt like hell during the beginning of it. So it was a 5-day run.
That's because you're running.
Well, it was this 5-day run, and honestly, going into it, like, one, I was public about it, right? So people could question that and be like, well, if he's really doing this for himself, why is he even being public about it, right? So that's a good question. I mean, a little bit of it is like I have a brand that I'm trying to build around the gym, and a little bit of it is
It's marketing.
The reason that I started doing that stuff is because other people were public, and like it inspired me. I listened to David Goggins' interview. I've read his book. I started watching him, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna push me a little bit. So that was a part of it. But then, yeah, I mean, I posted this picture, and someone commented on it, like saying, like, do you even work out? And I'm like, wow, gut check.
Yeah, I don't even pay attention to that shit.
I know. I
mean, like,
it was so funny though, because she ended up deleting it, but it was hilarious because, I mean, if I was talking to someone about this the other day, my goal was to do this like big run, and she said, like, are you even in good shape? And it was like, I ran 100 miles in 5 days. So it was like, I don't know what kind of shit. She was talking about body composition, right? Like, do you even work out? She's like, I'm just surprised you're a gym owner and you don't seem like you're in very good shape. And I'm like,
yeah, okay. See, I don't let that shit bother me.
That didn't bother me at all. I actually thought it was really funny, but you get that, like, you get a lot of negativity from people.
Well, sure.
That makes you, like, if my goal was to like look really good physically, and I put a picture up thinking like I looked good physically, that would have shredded me to pieces. It would have like destroyed my ego. And
but in the end, though, it's like, I just don't give a rat's ass. I just don't care. I mean, I will share what I find interesting, or something I experienced, or I have a memory of years ago doing something in my business, or a memory of my kids. I don't give a shit if anybody looks at it. Yeah. If 100 people like it, or one, or no one, I don't care. I don't.
The subtle art of not giving a fuck.
I don't care. Oh my God. It's. And it doesn't make me some kind of spiritual guru who's indifferent to life at all. I mean, people can get under my skin. I try not to be around them, but it can happen. I know that I'm going to do my best to express the best Eric I possibly can to my clients, family, friends. Do this, have fun with it. Don't intentionally hurt anybody. Yeah. I might have a snide remark here or there. If I find something ironically funny, you're going to hear about it. If you don't like it, that's on you. Yeah. I don't care. And getting
that's amazing that you're like that.
Getting to that place, though, it took a while.
I was going to say, like, what was the path like to that? Because
I think, running an internet guitar business image was everything. Our branding, and I was very sensitive to the customer satisfaction thing. I wanted all my online customers to be happy, and I fought for our reputation. But all that fighting and angst and paranoia and everything, after a while, might have kind of pushed me out of the business. Yeah. And as I became a realtor, still very heightened about how I'm perceived. Right. But in the end, the last couple of years, starting this podcast made me realize that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this podcast and not have any idea where it's going or what it's happening. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm good with that. Right. And most of the people I encounter, luckily, they seem to be happy with me and the work I do. Awesome. Right. I can't please everybody, and now I'm not really going to worry about it, because that's on them. There's some other issues going on there that probably had nothing to do with me. And I don't know, just old age maybe, but just hearing enough good stories like yourself and talking to people and seeing all this really cool work going on and this really cool thought process that made me realize that in the southwestern PA, there are amazingly not risk adverse people that want to take risks, willing to stand up to the plate, help each other. There's some really good people in southwestern PA. Yeah. It isn't just national guests that national podcasters can draw. Yeah. Our region is unbelievable. Right. So that goodness is here, and I want to talk to these people because they make me a better person, and they make me remain adaptable and be willing to consider different opinions and live a more open life, and not worry about the fluff. Social media, man, use it for what
it's good for.
Well, I think use it for the way you want to use it. If you can get anything out of it, whether it's emotional or financial, then fucking do it.
Yeah.
But don't use it as a torment piece.
Right.
And definitely, whatever you do, don't get your news of the world from there. Because believe me, the person down the street from you, or the person, in a neighboring town on social media is not more than likely going to enrich your life whatsoever.
Yeah.
They're just not. They can be fodder, it can be funny.
Yeah.
You can laugh at people. I do. I laugh at a lot of people. They deserve to be laughed at.
Yeah.
It's funny as shit. But I'll get that out of it, but I'm not going to let them piss me off.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
I love it. I need a script out
It's
of your
just
book,
no.
man.
I think I've just been around on this earth a little longer, man. That's it. I mean, it's just to me. I don't know. It's and I don't have it all figured out because believe me, someone will irritate me later today.
Yeah.
I'm not indifferent to everything.
Yeah.
But I try as much as I can to be kind and don't have an opinion on things that I don't really understand. It makes life a lot easier.
I think you're living a powerful philosophy though that is really hard for a lot of people to get right.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me now.
Yeah. I mean, Manson wrote the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
And he actually said in an interview, like, if I told people I was writing a book on life philosophy and the way to think about life, no one would have read it.
Yeah.
But I call it The Subtle Art of
Well,
Not Giving
I
a
bought
Fuck.
that. I'm one of the suckers. I bought that book at Barnes a couple years ago simply because of the cover.
Yeah, the cover. Yeah. So, but I mean, he talks a lot about this kind of stuff in there. And to be honest, like, if I'm being very vulnerable and frank right now, I've always had the personality of like the mayor, right? I just want people to like me.
Yeah, I think
and
most
sometimes
of us are, though, right?
I work too hard for that, I think.
Yeah.
And when I feel like people don't, I honestly am like, why? And it
I've
bothers
been there.
me.
I've been there.
Even people I don't like, it bothers me when they don't like me.
I've been there.
I'm like, wait a minute, I have reasons to not like you. You don't have a reason to not like me.
I've been
but
there. I get it.
And I think at the end of the day, especially even being a business owner now, because people come in constantly and someone might be having a bad day, they walk right by me, they don't say hi, and I'm like, I'm like, what did I do to them?
Yeah.
Or I see them say hi to someone else, and I'm like,
that's
that's
unnecessary paranoia.
I know, right?
That shit will drive you crazy.
And it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
So what I started doing, and the reality is that, like, when you pay attention to that kind of stuff, you actually do yourself a disservice. When you're just constantly kind to people, and you're just genuine and you're just authentic.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have interactions throughout the day that might not have gone the way that you wanted them to go. You just have to let that go. And so for me, like, the peace comes in just knowing that, like, I do what I can to be good to other people.
Absolutely.
And
that's enough.
Yeah, and that's enough.
It's enough.
And so there's no, it's again like I appreciate the people in my life and I appreciate the interaction. So instead of having the expectations around what I want other people to do or how they should act or whatever, I just got to let that go. But I think a lot of people struggle with that.
I think so too.
And honestly, like, they'll never say it, but they'll be like, well, why does this person like that person's post but not my post? It's that kind of stuff
that's carrying it a bit. That's carrying it a bit far. But I get it. I get it.
I talk to people, and like, there are there's those kind of things going on, and I think that there's just levels of paranoia that people have and levels of concern that people have, and I genuinely believe you, right? When you kind of talked about the way you think about stuff. I think a lot of people say, I don't give a shit. But I think they really give a shit.
Yeah.
They get, and for me, it would be bullshit for me to say that I don't give a shit.
Well, there's probably elements of my life that I could say right now, that doesn't bother me. But if it got me in the right mood, I can be. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I just really have embraced indifference.
Well,
and the society I'm living in now has made it so enticing to do so, from a political standpoint, from an identity standpoint that we're supposed to have, and all this stuff. I don't think if I can't contribute, if I feel I can't contribute something to the conversation or the narrative, then I have no right to open my fucking mouth.
Right.
And I'm just not going to.
Yeah.
And so I opened it plenty of other times, but it becomes the having an opinion on something I'm not versed in or I don't care enough about, then I don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you don't care.
Right.
I don't care that you do care. I'm supposed to be right or left or or you're supposed to think this way about this or this way. I don't have any identities.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like country music, but outside of just like that genre of country music I don't get, I'm just kidding. I don't wear my political identity or my I try not to wear anything as a badge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think that's the way that we all should be and want to be, but it's hard.
No, I don't think we all want to be. I think there's plenty of people that are happy to be, a liberal.
That's a good point.
I'm happy to be conservative. I'm happy to be this and happy to be that.
Yeah,
well, okay.
That's a good point.
If that genuinely brings them happiness, man, I am all for it. It's when you go into society and you want to combat with people. You want to go into combat, which is just crazy to me. Like, I mean, I know which way I lean politically, I guess, in terms of philosophy, but it really isn't anyone else's business, and shame on me if I make it someone else's business.
Well, the irony in all of it is that usually when there's a valuable exchange between two people, it's like, just think of it as a transaction. It's when one person has a need and the other person has an answer, right? That's when valuable transactions and conspire. So it could be as simple as like, hey, I don't know anything about nutrition and I need a nutrition coach, right? And then that person provides valuable insight and then that person listens and now there's a good transaction that has happened. Someone has taught, someone has learned.
Right.
The problem is that everyone's trying to be a teacher to a student that is also a teacher back to them, like they're trying to force opinions on people that don't think they have a problem, like you're trying to get someone to accept your point of view that doesn't want your point of view. If you take someone from the left that's trying to educate someone from the right, the person from the right is not sitting there asking them like, please teach me everything you know, I want to be like you. They're saying the exact opposite back. So that's the craziest thing about all of the political banter I see 24/7 on like Facebook. And I've had people tell me this. They're like, people question all the time why I do this. Like, am I really going to change anyone's minds? And I'm hoping I can just change one. And I'm like, you won't.
Yeah.
You'll never change one. Yeah. Because the only people that are not tuning you out are just the people that violently disagree with you.
Of course.
Everyone else tunes you out. I
combat.
literally have removed every single person from my Facebook that makes any kind of political opinionated post more than like once. I give them like once or twice and then they're gone.
You care too much, man.
Well, I have to remove them because I can't deal with seeing it all the time. I just don't care. Like, I don't want to see it on my feed.
No, I get that. I get that. So
I do care too much. That's true.
In contemplating the last couple of years and listening to people, I've come like these four statements in regards to how I try to enter every engagement.
Yeah.
I try to, number one, meet somebody, I try to bring humility.
Yeah.
Then I want to actively listen to them.
Yeah.
And then from there, I want to seek understanding. So whatever they've told me, and I've taken in, I want to try to understand that. Right. And from that, I want to find the common ground. Once I find that common ground, I can make a friend. But if I don't have those four working in unison, then there's a problem. And you just described, liberals trying to talk to conservatives. There's no humility, right? They're not actively listening, right? I mean, so you're done. You can just stop right there. There's just not going to be any healthy exchange,
right?
And I'm just not interested in that kind of conversation with somebody. Well, I'll be humble and I'll listen to what you have to say, and I'll actively listen and I'll try to understand and I'll even look for common ground and I'll do all of that. But in the end, if I try to find the common ground and then work with you on the common ground, if you still aren't willing to do it, I'm out. Yeah,
100%. And that's my approach with everyone, right? Like I don't just shut people down, but either way, even if I agree with it, if it's continuous, like trying to educate a market that doesn't want to be educated,
right?
I don't see any value or use in it. I don't know why people subscribe to it so much. It would literally be like me joining a Facebook group for people that hate lifting, and every day I go on there and I'm like, hey, did you guys lift today yet? And they're like, dude, we don't lift. Still leave us alone. But you really should. You don't know how important it is. Like, I need you to start lifting. They're going to be like, dude, You're not going to convince us otherwise. Just leave us alone. We don't want to live.
I think in the bigger picture, what's the scary thing is that I think a portion of our society, a good portion of our society, is going to get left behind because there are going to be people that are not going to play. They're not going to play the social media game. They're not going to play social media entanglement. They're going to work outside of that, and they're going to build things. They're going to create things. They're going to make a lot of money. They're going to make amazing things. They're going to grow amazing organizations. But those that are playing the game, that are playing the game of fighting with each other and drinking and eating and not taking care of their health and being sucked in by the video screen, when they play that game, they're going to get left behind. The divide between the creators and the dynamic people who do things in life and everyone else is going to get wider and wider and wider and wider. And that's what I see as the biggest problem 15, 20, 30, 50 years from now. It's superseding everything will be that divide between those two groups of people. And that's kind of scary. That's kind of scary because they're that divide getting wider, they're not going to be able to communicate. Because I can assure you, people that are going to be creating amazing inventions, creating amazing experiences, growing organizations, making a lot of money, and then living their life differently. They're going to be so far removed from having anything in common with those people who want that sedentary, caustic lifestyle. They're not going to be able to communicate, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. That's what I fear more than anything.
Well, we talked about surface level education. The problem is to really get educated on political things that are happening. It's very hard. There's not good sources for that. And no one wants to do it.
But still, it's already, you're right. And I think you made a very good statement. It's very hard right now to find, or it's very hard right now to actually find the truth. But just because it's hard work, I will not give a pass to people. Shame on them for not doing it.
100%.
You have a responsibility. If you're going to vote, if you're going to participate in the system, or even if you're not going to vote, if you're just going to talk to other humans, you owe it to that. You owe it to the national narrative. You owe it to your fellow humans to at least a little bit understand what comes out of your mouth.
100%.
And when you don't, you haven't taken the time to do that, you're not helping anyone. You're actually hurting the
every
system.
Subject, every topic, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
So I think it's a challenge. And the bigger challenge is that, it's just like, it's the proximity limitations, right? We have more access to information, but the information is just getting more and more wrong.
No doubt. No doubt.
So the people that are, like the young generations, all they know is what their parents know and believe, right? Or what they're influenced by their other friends and stuff. So I hope something changes eventually, because I think the divide's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. But at the same time,
just keep kicking ass. Just do your own thing. That's my advice to anyone. Just find what you dig.
Right.
Just find what you dig and just do it.
Yeah.
And fail. Fail a couple times. Fail 50 times.
Right.
Maybe you won't fail at all. Do it. But you're not going to find out unless you do it.
Yeah.
Because just sitting around and watching other people live their lives and watching television and being attached to your phone and not really reading and not educating and exercising your brain. If you don't do those things, your life is going to suck.
Yeah.
For most people, unless you hit the lottery, your life is kind of going to suck. And at the end of the road, you don't want to be there, like you said, with regrets or looking back going, wow, why did I waste all this time?
This is the mountain metaphor for me. So I actually wrote a book called Light Your Fire. And it's short, and it's just like kind of some motivational talk around how do you find a challenge and go do all that. But it's the metaphorical mountain. So most people are at base camp and they'll never even come up with that mountain, right? And the mountain could be anything. It could be a writing adventure. Right. It could be a podcasting adventure. It could be just getting out on your own, creating your own company, doing something, right? That's the mountain. And, typically the thought process is like you want to be at the top of the mountain. But the reality that no one truly understands is that the whole journey is like the fulfillment, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's being in the trenches, it's falling down, it's figuring out how to get back up. That journey up the mountain is what makes it all really.
That's life.
That's life. And that's what makes it all worthwhile. But that's not life at base camp. That's a different type of life because you're searching for something. You're chasing something. You're working hard to get there. And I think that I think when you find the mountain, you start to care less about all the noise, and you start to tune it out a little bit, which is kind of like me. I didn't mean to sound like mean, and I'm not open-minded to people that have different, or actually I delete people that have the same political view. It's just too much noise that I don't want to be, consumed by. So my noise is the stuff that revolves around that mountain, and it comes back to that quote, like life happens at the end of your comfort zone. That ended up being what it meant to me. Yeah. Find your own mountain, find that challenge, and then you're going to be in the middle of that mountain and you're going to think life is really hard. And,
no doubt.
And the reality is no great person ever created anything great or became great without being at a rock bottom. Like they went through a challenging road to get there.
No question, right? Yeah, there's no question.
I don't think there's anyone that, and yeah, there's rich people out there, but I'm sure you heard Joe Rogan's rant on he thinks everyone, has this vision of just being rich and sitting on a boat eating grapes with silk sheets on. And he's like, I don't want that. Like you might think you want that for like a week, but then you're gonna be like,
it's called vacation.
Yeah, I'm like bored as shit. What am I gonna do with the rest of my life? You know? So I don't know. The book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, kind of rocked me a little bit. When you start to think about people on their deathbed and everything that they regret, you're like, maybe I should go focus on those things a little bit.
I think we're all in a need of continual improvement because all of us are failing. I mean, and that's Goggins, to steal from Goggins. We're always failing. Yeah. And we're too comfortable and we're seeking the wrong things. Yeah. It's hard to argue. I mean, I'm not saying his path is the way for everybody. It certainly isn't the path for me. That son of a bitch is crazy. Yeah. But his mantras are impressive and they're applicable to anyone, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, outside of his obvious points that he makes and motivates people by, there's a sub layer, and there's a lot of people that believe this, but it's the mindset that you can do so much more than you think that you can do. 100%. Right? And that comes out in a lot of the things that he says, but it's so true that when you start thinking big and you don't think of it as a wish, I wish one day I was doing this or that or being that person. When it becomes like in your mind, that will happen. It's like the Alchemist, right? The universe will start to conspire to help you, right?
Right.
And so everything starts going that direction.
And that happens. And we don't have to understand why it happens. Just know that it does.
Yeah. And literally, I think me tuning out a lot of the noise and the garbage was a big part of what has helped me so far.
Well, sure.
Because it created time for other things, other inputs, right?
Absolutely.
So I didn't purposely do that. That was just kind of like I started becoming less and less interested in those things and more interested in positive things, big thinking people. I forget, it might have been The Magic of Thinking Big that talked about this, there's the other book I can't remember off the top of my name. But it talks about the science behind the people that you surround yourself by in your environment.
Absolutely.
And if you are just surrounded by negative thinking, always mad, always cynical, always, and honestly, I say this all the time, these could be people that love you.
Of course.
They're going to shoot down your big ideas.
Course.
They're going to tell you that you can't, that you shouldn't, that you won't, and they're going to hope you don't.
Jim Rohn used to say, don't join an easy crowd.
Right.
You won't grow.
Right.
And he's right.
Yeah. Some of them are doing it to protect you, right? Like if you have a big idea, your dad might say, don't do that. I want you to go get this safe job because
it doesn't matter.
They're trying to protect you.
It doesn't matter. In the end, it really is what you ingest and what decision that you make.
Yeah. So I tell people you don't have to leave your dad, never talk to him again. But you have to find the people that you relate to that are going to embrace your ideas. No big person will ever shoot down a small person's idea.
Exactly.
And if they do, they're not a big person. They're just disguised as one, the big boss or whatever.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. And I think that it's too easy to say that if they're really your friends, they would they'd buy into your system. No, they're your friends because they care and love you, and the only way they know to express their concerns and their fear for you is the way they're doing it. You don't shun those people,
right? But
that may not be the influence that you want in your mind all the time.
So go find the influencers.
Absolutely right.
Like, go find the people. And
absolutely.
My last job, I was working with a guy who was very high up and super smart guy, but his influence on people was so bad. And it just killed me. It's everywhere. I did consulting for a long time. Everywhere I went, I saw the real bad cancers of the organization that were just. And it's sad because the people under them, like that's their like realm of influence. And it's toxic. It's literally toxic in a culture. I was at a point where like I was recommending that 2 directors be fired because they were just creating such a cancer to the organization.
Right.
But this guy used to sit in meetings with them, and I would just stare at him and like, because he came off as this powerful powerhouse kind of person. To me, he was just a huge problem to the entire organization. I would look at him and just think like, I want like 5 minutes with you in a gym, because he's a weak person.
Yeah.
Like he's just a weak ass person disguised as this like powerful ego maniac, and I'm like, and it's the same thing with challenge yourself. Like I mean, there's a adage called dip in a fire. Like, swords get stronger when you dip them in fire, right? So same thing, put yourself in fire. Go sit in I should be careful. I don't recommend doing this, but if you want a challenge, go sit in a sauna until you get to the point where you want to get out. And then stay in for 3 more minutes.
Right.
And you'll figure out how mentally tough you are.
No doubt.
And I gotta say that with caution because I don't want anyone passing out dying in a sauna. But the second things get uncomfortable, people will get the hell out of the sauna.
It's a good analogy.
Stay in for 3 more minutes and figure out who you are. And it's the same thing, and I use running. I hate running. I hate running more than anyone could hate running. I hate anything. And it bothered me that like I'd run a half a mile and want to quit. So then I'm like, well, I'm gonna run a mile, and then I got a mile and I wanted to quit, and that just bothered me that I should be able to mentally. It wasn't the physical. It didn't bother me physically. Yet it will eventually.
Yeah, the mental tenacity is definitely. I mean, that's the trick.
Yeah, I'm like, why do I want to quit already?
Yeah, there's so much we can do physically more than it's our mind. It's our mind.
This 100-mile thing I'm doing with my buddy, like we're both going into this knowing that this is a mental war that we're going into.
No doubt.
It's not physical. We both physically could move for 50 hours straight. We're going to be 10 miles in, 2 hours in, and be like, we have 90 miles to go and it's pitch black, And I honestly, I said this during my first marathon, like, I couldn't wait till I got to the point in that race where I experienced the most physical pain I've ever had, because I'm going to figure out at that moment what I'm really capable of. And it happened 7 miles before the finish line.
I believe it.
Actually, it might have been a little more than 7.
I believe it.
And I'm thinking like, how the hell am I ever going to finish this thing? And now I do not wish that I wish this, but the hindsight looking back, and again, like this sounds like ego, but to me it was like a massive learning experience that I like try to share with people, because that taught me something about myself.
For sure.
That when things get hard, I had 7 more miles, right? And even with the business quarantine this year, you think everything is going to shut down, and it's like, we probably got 7 more miles. Goggins talks about all the time, when you think you're at 100%, you're probably at 40.
Right. Yeah, I know.
And it's amazing when you start to put yourself in those tests. That's what the beauty of life is. Like, you start to figure it out, So
learn.
that kid that came to me and I said, what's the biggest accomplishment you ever had, right? He had to run like a PT test or something. And I said, what's the furthest you've ever ran? He said 2 miles. And I said, go run 10 within the next 2 weeks. Physically, I knew he could do it. Mentally, I knew he was far from that, because he had only run 2 before. So he called me 3 weeks later and said, I just ran 10 miles. And I'm like, how's that feel? He's like, dude, I would have never imagined I could do that. And
It's the mind, man.
Yeah, it's the mind. It's
mental game.
100%.
Buddy, how can they reach you?
Oh, man. Well, I guess for the business side, Sweat Bar Fitness, we have a page. There's some cool stuff going on there. If you're in the area, come check us out. We have a free trial. We have an app. You can download the app, just do the free trial in there. email me at drip@sweatbarfitness.com for the business side. And
Just
then,
Google them.
Yeah, I'm out
can't
there.
find 'em,
Chad Shipley @gmail.com.
There you go.
Yeah,
Man. There you
that's
go.
it.
Come back and see me.
Definitely, man. Yeah,
Have a good time?
This is a huge honor,
Have a
man.
good time?
Huge privilege. Like, just
Thank
to
you
give
for-
you a shout out,
Thank you for doing it, man.
stuff I see you post, like that's the kind of, like I like those kind of inputs. Like you have a really good way of thinking about the world. You're wise on subjects. You articulate things well. So that's why it was
Don't
a
make
huge
my
honor
head
for
get
me,
any
man.
bigger than it is.
Back to ego.
I appreciate the kind words. I'm just trying to reflect back things that I ingest that resonate with me. If it grabs somebody else, awesome. If they don't, well, then too bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Come back
man.
and see me, Bo.
Cool, brother.
All right.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks
Friends,
so much.
We're out.
Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.